welcome back to an introduction to paleontology with the Save Cultural Heritage group. This is week 5 out of 6 and it is on mammalian evolution. As always, I'm Jenna, your mentor, lecturer, whatever you want to call me. And so let's get going. So in today's lesson you will learn what mammals are, mammalian evolution pre-Mesozoic, mammalian evolution during the Mesozoic, and mammals after the end Cretaceous mass extinction. So let's get to it. What is a mammal? Mammals are a group of vertebrate animals consisting of the class Mammalia. And the class Mammalia is a group of animals with shared characteristics and ancestors. There are 4 subgroups. 3 are extant, which are the placentals, marsupials and monotremes, and there are 1 extinct, which is known as the multituberculates. So the mammalian line diverted from the reptile line sometime during the late Carboniferous, and it is only in the late Triassic that true mammals evolved. So what are the key characteristics of mammals? So there are mammary glands, which are the glands that mammals use to produce milk for their young. They're furry or hairy, which although some have since lost, so for example humans, we are like the least hairy mammals going. Bellow lungs, which is a type of lung that mammals have, and it's rib and diaphragm expansion and contraction, so it's like this when we're breathing. We have a neocortex, which is present in all mammals, and a corpus callosum, which is in placentals only. So the neocortex is part of the brain's cerebral cortex, which is where higher cognitive function is thought to have originated from. And the corpus callosum is a bundle of around 200 million nerve fibres that connect the 2 hemispheres of the brain. We also have 1 jawbone, which is known as the dentary. There are 3 inner ear bones, known as the malleus, incus and stapes, and usually we have 7 cervical vertebrae. So this can change. There are some examples where certain mammals have more or less, but generally the number that we have is 7. So as you can see here in the giraffe versus human, our cervical vertebrae are the same, but their lengths are different. Whereas because giraffes are have really large necks, they've got to have large cervical vertebrae to hold their head up. So another key definition between them all is the reproductive organs. So there are 3 major body plans that are extant today, which are the monotremes and the marsupials and the placentals. So monotremes are egg layers. They have mammary glands which secrete milk through patches of skin. I've realised that I've spelled patches wrong. Marsupials, they have the pouches that we all know today in kangaroos, and they can nurture 2 different offspring at different developmental stages. So they could have 1 neonate and 1 juvenile. And placentals, which is what humans are, we carry neonates to full term, and then kind of after these neonates are born, we don't really need to care for them. As well as this, placentals are able to become fully marine because of the way that we give birth. So as you can see here, monotremes are the echidna and the platypi, plural of platypuses. Anyway, you know what I mean. Marsupials include koalas, wallabies, kangaroos and wombats. And then placental mammals are basically everything else that is on Earth today. So we have like bats, bears, elephants, humans, whales, everything. It's really cool. So the way that we can distinguish between the 2 like synapsids and diapsids. So mammals are the only living members of the synapsids. Reptiles and birds are diapsids. And the way that we can distinguish between a synapsid and a diapsid is the amount of temporal fenestrae in the skull. So these are bilaterally symmetrical holes in the temporal bone in the skull. There are other skull configurations where they've not got any temporal fenestrae, which have been secondarily lost. It's quite an interesting thing to read up on. So, for example, tortoises, they don't have any temporal fenestrae. And so for a while they were thought that they were on their own, like little clade, but it turns out that they just secondarily lost the diapsid configuration. So here is a really, really useful cladogram on the different mammals, and it's very faint, but the KPG boundary is shown in like a grey background. So quite a lot of these mammals all have origins somewhere in the KPG, but after the dinosaurs died out, well, the non-avian dinosaurs died out, mammals were kind of left with this opportunity, really, to just absolutely go ham and diversify. It's really interesting the rate in which they rapidly diversified. So they've in this cladogram, they've colour-coded branches of placental mammals, and we will go on to that in a bit. So the early synapsids are known as pelycosaurs or pelycosaur grade synapsids. The term we are kind of all familiar with is the mammal-like reptiles. So this isn't really used anymore because it just isn't really accepted within the paleontological community, as they are their own sort of clade instead of the they're not reptiles, they are just proto-mammals. And they were the largest terrestrial vertebrates during the Permian, which is around 250 million years ago. And then the number and diversity of these early synapsids were reduced heavily by the Permian-Triassic extinction, where like nearly, I think it was like 70% of all terrestrial animals died. And then by the end of the Permian, all of the older forms of the synapsids, known as the pelycosaurs, were gone, and they were replaced by more advanced therapsids, which are a branch of mammals from the synapsids. So let's see some early synapsids. So this is a cladogram here, and there's been quite a lot of reshuffling with it about recently. So, for example, it was thought that casiosaurs were most basal, and Ophiocontidae were like kind of a bit more what's the word? Diverge? No. Quite a lot like younger than the casiosaurs, but the most generally accepted is that the Ophiocontidae are the most basal synapsids, and then Therapsida is what we are all part of. So the Ophiocontids, there are about 6 or 7 genera, and they range from the early Carboniferous to the early Permian. And these are early eupelycosaurs. So eupelycosaurs are the clade encompassing all mammals and their closest extinct relatives. And it was debated as to what lifestyle they led. So quite a lot of early paleontologists thought that they were aquatic or semi-aquatic, but recent studies suggest that they were just solely terrestrial. And the earliest Ophiocodon was Archaeothyres, which we'll go on to in a bit. And the most famous example of an Ophiocontid is Ophiocodon, which is from the Permian of New Mexico in the USA. And this was ranging in length from 1.6 to 3 meters, and the snout region of the skull takes up 3/5 of the total skull length. And it's thought that Ophiocodon was a carnivore, and that's based on teeth. So here's the fossil Ophiocodon. So there we have what it would look like in, well, an artist's rendition of what it looked like in when it was living. And so Archaeothyres is the earliest known synapsid. It's dated to 306 million years ago, which is the Pennsylvanian period of the late Carboniferous. The synapsid temporal fenestra is already fully developed, so this one temporal fenestra in synapsids is already present in Archaeothyres, and it had strong jaws that could have opened extremely wide, and it was then discovered that they had a large pair of canines, which is thought that it was probably like a carnivore or insectivore. And it was found in Nova Scotia, which during the Carboniferous was a swamp, which was similar to the Everglades in America, and this is because of Nova Scotia's position near the equator during the Carboniferous. So we now move on to Veranopids. And there are about 11 genera, and they range temporally from late Carboniferous to early Permian. And the early Permian, they're found in the USA, and then the middle Permian, they're also found in Russia and South Africa. They are small carnivores. They are similar to monitor lizards, hence the name Varanopsids. Varanops is monitor lizards in today's phylogenies, and they could grow to no more than around 1.5 metres in length. And recent studies have found that found good support for Varanopids being reptiles instead of synapsids, and it's all a bit messy on the family tree with them, as we've got researchers arguing for this and researchers arguing against this. And they show features of true pelycosaurs, so they have deep, narrow, elongated skulls with long jaws and sharp teeth, but they also exhibit lizard-like features such as long tails, lizard-like bodies, and thin legs. So now we move to Caesiosauria, and these are known only from the late Carboniferous and the Permian. There are two families, and they are very different in terms of body size. So they have the small insectivorous Carboniferous Eothyrinae and the large herbivorous Caesidae. And the Caesidae are probably the most famous out of the Caesiosaurids, as they've gained quite a lot of internet popularity recently, which is really funny. So the Eothyrinidae are found in North America only, and an example of this is Eothyrus, and this was found in the early Permian of Texas, and it looked sort of like Ophiocodon, however it had shorter, broader snout. And then the Caesidae have been found in North America, Russia, Italy and France, and an example of this is Cotleorhynchus, and that is the early and middle Permian from Texas and Oklahoma, and it was considered the largest terrestrial vertebrate during the early Permian, as it could get up to 3 metres in length, but however it had a really disproportionately small skull, which is really funny when you look at the reconstructions. And it was most likely that Caesidae were herbivores. So here we have examples of Eothyrus and Cotleorhynchus. And I don't know why Cotleorhynchus had such a small skull, but I think it's very funny. It cracks me up every time I look at them. So now we move on to the Edaphosaurids, and these are early Carboniferous to late Carboniferous to early Permian aged, and they've been found in North America and Europe, and there's more fragmentary remains in Europe being found. So it's we primarily know them from North American fossils. And they had elongated neural spines on the cervical and dorsal vertebrae, so the spines, and it's thought that these neural spines were covered by skin. And this may have functioned as temperature control, sexual display, physical protection, or maybe communication. And the functions of these scales may have been different in different species or served several functions at once. So we also kind of need to other sailed synapsids at the time, which are the sphenocodonts, and you will know them mainly from Dimetrodon. So we will be moving on to sphenocodonts in a second, but it just needs to be highlighted that they are not the same. And it's thought that Edaphosaurids were herbivores, and this is shown by the structure of the skull and teeth. And so the jaws had teeth plates, which is really, really good for chewing up and grinding plant material. And so it's thought that these Edaphosaurids might have been the first herbivorous amniotes, fully herbivorous. So we will now move on to the there's an Edaphosaurus. So it looks very similar to Dimetrodon, however, it's a completely different family, and it was probably the main herbivores of the time when Dimetrodon were around. So now we move on to sphenocodontids, and these were medium to large-sized carnivores, and they were the most dominant carnivores of the early Permian. And they are known from North America and Europe. And the most famous example, like I've been saying, is Dimetrodon, which is found in Texas and in the early Permian rocks there. And it's the sister group to Edaphosauria, so they are most related on the family tree. And then the clade Sphenocodontia is used to designate a monophyletic group, which includes sphenocodontids and all of their descendants. So that includes us mammals. So the most famous example, like I say, is Dimetrodon. And Dimetrodon means two measures tooth. And this refers to the difference in teeth morphologies. And as mammals, we all have different teeth, and they all have different functions. So we have like in the incisors, the canines, the molars, and the premolars. And Dimetrodon exhibits this, which is really exciting. And these are found in early Permian rocks of Texas and neighbouring states. So I'm trying to think of American geography, but they've also been found in Germany. And they have a large sail similar to Edaphosaurids. And these neural spines that grew on the cervical and dorsal vertebrae could grow up to 1 metre in length. And we know that these neural spines could have had blood vessels running up them because they had grooves at the base on the articulation of the spine and the vertebrae. So when skeletons are found of Dimetrodon, the spines are usually articulated, which means that they were probably held together with a tough covering of skin in life. And because of fossil decay, these would have broken down. However, it would have left the vertebrae quite well fossilised. And it's thought that the sail acted for thermoregulatory reasons, and like modern day lizards, they would have basked in the sun to heat up, and then would have turned away from the sun to cool down. And Dimetrodon could reach a length of 3 metres, which is really big for that time during the Permian. So now we move on to the therapsids, and these are a group of eupelicosaurian synapsids, which includes modern mammals and their ancestors. And these are distinguished from numerous features that are not seen in synapsids, such as enlarged temporal fenestrae, and the anterior position of the jaw joint, modifications of the shoulder and pelvic joints, and these modifications would have allowed for limbs to be orientated underneath the body. So similar to how you would see a modern mammal moving. So for example, a horse, they don't have the sprawling gait, they just have a upright gait. And therapsids became the dominant land animals during the Middle Permian. There are four clades, don't know why I did 3, 4 clades, the Dinocephalians, the Anomodonts, the Bioarmasuchians, and the Theriodonts. So here are some examples. We have the Dinocephalian, the Amodont, the Bioarmasuchian, and the Theriodont. All kind of very similar in body morphology and presumably life. So Dicynodonts, these are really important in terms of our evolution, and they were herbivorous animals with a pair of tusks and horny toothless beak. So it had a beak which is really weird within the mammalian clade, and this is known as the two-dog tooth. That's just what it means in Greek or Latin. Greek, I think it is. And Dicynodonts first appeared during the mid-Permian and became dominant during the late Permian. They were absolutely devastated by the end Permian, and then during the Triassic, some obviously stayed through, and they became really large and they fulfilled niches similar to modern day rhinos and elephants, and then they died out at the end of the Triassic. They've been found in Russia, South Africa, Brazil, and China, and there are over 60 genera. And with Dicynodonts, there are examples of numerous different lifestyles. So we have examples of burrowers, which have been found preserved in their own burrows, climbers, diggers, browsers, etc. We have numerous different lifestyles for Dicynodonts. So next we move on to the Gorgonopsids, and these are the dominant carnivores in the late Permian, and their temporal range is the middle to late Permian. And there are around 35 genera. They're found in South Africa, Russia, and China. And For an example, Arctognathus, it could have opened its jaw to an angle of 90 degrees. So that's really quite wide. And it's known that Gorgonopsids had saber teeth, and they kind of looked like saber-toothed cats. And this was due to their canines being really elongated, and then their post-canine teeth, so premolars, molars, being generally reduced or absent. And they increased dramatically in size during the Permian, so we know this because we found small skulls with lengths of 10 to 15 centimetres in the middle Permian, and then they grew to about, with skull proportions of 60 centimetres in the upper Permian. And then they became extinct during the phase of the Permian-Triassic extinction. So, during the Permian-Triassic extinction, there were different phases of extinction of organisms, and this was due to different factors. And next we move on to the cynodonts. So they have a temporal range of the late Permian to recent, and they diversified after the Permian-Triassic extinction event. And during the Permian there were about 6 or 7 cynodont species, and so we are part of the cynodont clade, which is really cool. And the number of cynodont jawbones reduced to 1 dentary, and the rest of them moved to the ear. So within the cynodont clade, we can see how the bones that we have in the ear have moved from here on our jaw into our middle ear. And the teeth were differentiated, which is kind of a key mammalian factor, and the brain case was bulged at the back of the head. And mammals, so crown group mammals include marsupials and therians. All cynodonts probably laid eggs. And then also the zygomatic arch, which is this one here, widened to allow more jaw musculature. So it could have it would have been good for eating meat or breaking bones, for example. And we have an example of Thrixnodon, and I've included a little material on Thrixnodon, and it's this story behind it. So next we move on to the Mesozoic mammals. So yes, the Triassic is the Mesozoic, but the first so these are the key Mesozoic. So when I speak about Mesozoic in this PowerPoint, I'm meaning kind of Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous. But because I've included dicynodonts, gorgonopsids and cynodonts, which all have temporal ranges from the Permian to the Triassic, I've kind of put them before this. So the first recognisable mammals appeared during the late Triassic, and the oldest known mammal is Abelobasileus, which is found in late Triassic Texas. And this is known from brain case material, so that's the only sort of remains that we have of it. The most famous example of a Mesozoic mammal is Morganucodon, which is found from late Triassic to middle Jurassic rock. And it was first found in Glamorgan, Wales, and then since then, family members of Morganucodon, which are known as Morganucodontids, have been found in China, Europe, some parts of Europe and North America. And Mesozoic mammals generally had a shrew-like appearance, and they were all really small, with total body lengths of 150 millimetres. And there were around 34 mammalian families recorded in the Jurassic and the Cretaceous. So, Morganucodonts, we have about 15 species, and they're mainly early Jurassic aged. So we find them in Europe, North America, China and South Africa. And they are small insectivorous animals, and the tail was pretty long. The skull was around 2 to 3 centimetres in length, and it's thought that they had a body length of around 10 centimetres. So bar skull, the rest of the skeleton is poorly known, and it had a sprawling-like gait in the front limbs, but mammalian-like gait in the hind limbs, which is really, really weird. So we know quite a lot about our mammals from J. Hull. So this is the same locality that we talked about in the dinosaur lecture. And in J. Hull we found 11 species belonging to 5 major groups of mammals. So we have the multituberculates, I'm not even going to try saying them, the Metatherians and the Eutherians, the Eutrichonodontans and the Symmetrodontans, and they've all been described from the J-hole biota. So, as you can see in this picture, quite a lot of the specimens are fully articulated, and we have some examples of fur being found in J-hole fossils. And fossils from J-hole have provided evidence on the transitional mammalian middle ear. So, as I've said, the jaw bones have moved into the middle ear, and J-hole mammals have shown kind of like the intermediary placement of these bones after the movement from the jaw. So next we move on to the multituberculates. So these are the largest group of Mesozoic mammals with about 125 species. They are named for the multiple cusps on their teeth, and they date from the Middle Jurassic to the Eocene. There are no living descendants of multituberculates, and they were like rodent-like mammals, and they've been found globally, but they seem to have been outcompeted by rodents. So the reason why they were sort of rodent-like was because they have large incisors, such as a beaver, and a diastema. So a diastema is like a gap between teeth. So in beavers, for example, you have the two front incisors, a large gap, and then the rest of the teeth. And this has been found in the multituberculates. And phylogenetically, multituberculates are usually placed as crown mammals outside the two main groups of living mammals, the Therians, which include placentals and marsupials, and the monotremes. And it's been found that the multituberculates are closer to the Therians than the monotremes. So now we move on to the extant mammals. We have the monotremes. There are 5 extant species. We have the platypus, which is a single species, and then we have the echidnas, which are 4 species divided into 2 genera. So we have the short-beaked echidna and the long-beaked echidnas. And the fossil record of monotremes is really scanty at best. That's the best way to explain it. The first Mesozoic monotreme was found in the Cretaceous. However, genetic studies suggest that there was an origin of the monotremes in the Triassic. However, no fossils have been found of Triassic monotremes. It's the oldest living taxon of Mammalia, extant, and they lay eggs and have no teeth. The milk is provided for their young by pores on the female. And then monotremes lack the corpus callosum, which is the tube that connect the brain, in which placental mammals, it's the primary communication route between the left and right brain hemispheres. So here we have examples of the different monotremes. So we have the platypus, the short-beaked echidna, and 2 long-beaked echidna. And so now we move on to the marsupials and the placentals. So as you can see here, marsupials are in red, and the placentals are in... Marsupials are in red, placentals are in blue. So, Therian mammals, so this is the group that include placental and marsupials. The first known Therian mammal is Juramaia from the late Jurassic of China. And molecular data suggests that Therians may have originated even earlier, during the early Triassic. So, marsupials, there are around 335 extant species across 7 orders from Australasia and the Americas. And it's thought that they originated in the early Cretaceous of Asia and then spread globally. And it's thought that they split from placental mammals during the mid-Jurassic. No, from Eutherians during the mid-Triassic. However, there's no fossil data that's been found. However, DNA and protein analysis found that the time of divergence has been estimated to be 100 to 120 million years ago. And marsupials are distinctive because their young is carried in a pouch. And we mainly know marsupials from Australia. However, they have been found in South America and North America. So, for example, the possums in America. And then in Australia, we have the kangaroos, the koalas, the wallabies, and the wombats. So, marsupial diversity, there are 4 major clades. So, here we have these. So, Diprotodontia are the ones that we kind of know the best, as just in general it's the one that the media focuses on. So for example, it's the Diprotodontia, and these are split into possums and gliding phalangers, the wallabies and kangaroos, and the vombatiforms, which are koalas and wombats. So yeah, here we have some extinct fauna of Australia. So we have Thylaca leo, which is a marsupial lion on the top right. We have Dipterodon, which is like a giant wombat. We have Procoptodon, which is the giant short-faced kangaroo. And we have the thylacine. So these are all known from a really, really cool fossil locality in Australia, and it's a cave locality known as the Riversley fauna. Riversley caves and the Narracute caves. And these caves kind of act like a pit hole almost, where organisms get stuck or like live in the caves, and then we find their remains. So it's a really, really useful locality, and I've included some, I've included a podcast on it from Palaeocast, and if anyone's really interested, I can provide some more information. So next we move on to the placental mammals. There are over 5,100 extant species, and it's thought that the true placental mammals originated in the late Cretaceous around 90 million years ago. But the earliest undisputed fossils are from the early Paleocene, so that's the time straight after the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction. And the rapid appearance of placentals after the mass extinction suggests that placentals had already originated and undergone an initial diversification during the late Cretaceous. And it's thought that placental mammals diverged from eutherians with modern orders, excluding the primates and the xenarthrans, originating within 20 million years of the KPG boundary. So there's thought to be three major subdivisions of placental mammals: the Boreoeutheria, the Athrotheria, and the Xenarthra. Xenarthra include armadillos, sloths, and anteaters. Athrotheria includes aardvarks, elephant shrews, tenrecs, golden moles, hyraxes, elephants, manatees, and dugongs. And then Boreoeutheria include the Lagomorpha. So the Boreoeutheria are split into two: the Euarchontoglias. So that includes kind of the rabbits, rodents, bats, tree shrews, and primates. And then Laurasiatheria include pretty much everything else. So the hedgehogs, artiodactyls, which are the even-toed ungulates. So that includes like cows and whales. It's really weird to think that whales came from like artiodactyls, but the evolution of whales is really, really interesting, and I would definitely read up on them. And we also have the Perissodactylia, which are the odd-toed ungulates, so that includes like horses, tapirs, and rhinos. We also have the pangolins and the carnivores, so dogs, bears, cats, seals, mongooses, hyenas, everything, which is really, really interesting. So here we have another cladogram. So as you can see here, we have, it's kind of based on genetic studies, so based on fossil evidence, and morphological evidence, you wouldn't really put some clades within these clades, but more genetic evidence, which is kind of the most useful out of the two. This is what we come up with. So we have Athrotheria, Xenarthra, and then we have the Boreoeutherias. We have the Euarchontoglias and the Laurasiatheria. And so that was kind of like a whistle-stop tour of mammalian evolution. I hope that kind of helped, but please just let me know if I've rushed through things too quickly, or if you need some help, or if you just want to chat mammals with me because they're my favourite. And we now have some further reading. So a really useful book is The Beasts Before Us by Elsa Pancreoli, which I have somewhere down here. It's kind of a really good introduction to the to early synapsids and the mammalian evolution. We have The Princeton Field Guide to Prehistoric Mammals, another great book. The End of the Megafauna by Ross McPhee. The Origin and Evolution of Mammals, these all books are really, really great. And then we also have PBS Eon videos and Paleocast podcasts. But so please just let me know. There are many, many more books. So, for example, there are The Walking Whales, which is a really good book as well. And so yeah, just if you're interested in anything, I'm sure that I can help with like finding resources and books, but please just reach out to me. And as per usual, this is my contact, so please just let me know if you need any help or if you're enjoying the course, just let me know. So yeah, I'll see you all next week for the final week on human evolution. Crazy, it's gone so quickly. Bye everyone!